Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. We're doing another 5-sauce video. I have no idea what month this video is going to come out in. I'm currently recording this in July. Just so you guys can understand the scope of this video, I recorded the first part back in the winter time when there was a literal snowstorm happening just in my window right outside. And right now I'm recording it in the middle of summer, and it is like 105 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So it is so warm. I'm wearing the hat as a sacrifice for you guys. Well, it's actually because I haven't washed my hair and I want to record today and I don't want to wash my hair, so yeah. I've made the mistake of looking like a greasy rat in plenty of videos already. We don't need more of those. Also, I have press-on nails today. I'm going to a wedding, so I have them on now. So if it looks like I'm struggling to do basic tasks, that's why. Also, if you just see one of them disappear off my fingers and it falls off while I'm recording, don't say anything. I'm already insecure about wearing these things. You guys know me, you've seen my videos. I have little nubbins normally. I have very, very short nails because I type a lot and I play piano and stuff. But for this special occasion, we got the grippers on. That special occasion is, of course, us talking about Youngblood, which is a very, very big moment in 5 Seconds of Summer's career. And a real turning point for, in my opinion, pop music as a whole. Or I guess, like, the song Youngblood itself and the album didn't like cause pop music to change, but like it was a reflection of how pop music had changed. I'll get into it. I'll get into the details in a little bit, don't worry. But first we need to cover some old stuff that went on. Oh, my dog. He's being such a cute little guy. All of the previous segments were recorded when I was at my dorm in college, and I'm going back in like a month, but I'm at home for summer break right now, so I get to use the TV set, which I love so much. I realize my head is covering the second Mabav disc. Look, I got two guys. It's just that one of them's in Dutch, but we don't talk about that. Also, my shirt says 5-sauce on it, I promise. I know it kind of looks like it just says, like, so, because of my hair. So, but no, it says 5-sauce, I promise. I'm pretty sure it's actually a limited edition Youngblood shirt. I'm recording down here as well. Not on purpose for any reason in particular. But, like, look, see, it has all of them, pictures of all of them when they were young, and then it says Youngblood. Isn't that cute? So before we get into the new stuff, we need to cover where 5-sauce were before they released and recorded this project. In my previous section, I had mentioned that they were going to start their tour Sounds Live, Feels Live. At least I think I did. If I didn't, they went on tour. I'm pretty sure Sounds Live, Feels Live is the biggest concert they've ever went on. It lasted from February of 2016 to October of 2016, so it was just the entire year, pretty much. And they announced it while they were still on tour for Rock Out With Your Socks Out, which I think I for sure mentioned in the previous part. You know that Sounds Live Feels Live was a big tour because that's when I got to see them live for the very first time. I have a picture of the t-shirt I bought on the side of the road from some guy who was selling illegal bootlegs because the merch, the official merch that they were selling was way too expensive. So if I remember, I'll put a picture of the t-shirt. I don't wear it anymore because one, it doesn't fit, and two, because I want to preserve it because I wore it like literally every day, so it got all torn up and tattered. Apparently, shirts that are made in people's basements that they sell for $15 on the side of the road during a concert are not the highest quality, and the design starts to fade over time. If you've seen me in that Megadeth t-shirt that's like barely even holding together anymore in some of my videos, that's another one I bought on the side of the road. So yes, I did see 5-sauce perform live. I got the tickets like months and months in advance. I actually got the tickets as a Christmas gift because it was announced in like October, the tour, and the show wasn't going to be for me until September of 2016. So in December of 2015, my parents said, hey, when the tickets go on sale, we'll buy them for you, which is kind of hilarious. And it was like the best gift they could have ever gotten me. They just gave me a card that said, hey, we're going to buy you 5-sauce tickets in like 6 months. And it was awesome. And I don't know if Live Nation or Ticketmaster still does this, but back in the day, you could go to like a Kroger store and buy them in the store, like the physical tickets. And in May, they would do a half-off deal. So you would get the tickets for like one weekend in May. You'd get tickets half off. So that's what my parents did, to save a buck or two. So I went with a couple of friends of mine. I think that's what made it like extra special, is that they bought multiple tickets for me to take my friends to. And I was sitting literally the farthest back you could ever be, because this was an amphitheater, and a lot of amphitheaters, at least in the Southwest, have like a lawn in the back that you can sit on. And those are the cheapest tickets, which are the tickets my parents bought. And I was basically sitting in the back of the lawn because it was pretty packed, and my dad didn't want to be too far away from the parking lot. My dad took me, by the way. He's the best. Love you, Dad. So I have some footage of when I saw them live. I basically recorded like the first 2 seconds and then I put my phone away and just enjoyed the experience. It's not like I was gonna get any footage anyways. They were like this big. You know, that was the biggest I could see them.
Look, there's Michael.
But yeah, it was my first ever concert, and it was truly one of my favorite moments of all time. So, they joke about in the 10-year anniversary podcast thing that they did that Michael would perform Jet Black Heart, and he would get up on stage with a spotlight on him, and the audience would just cheer. And it got to the point where he was doing it for like 10, 15 minutes at a time, and I swear I think I just stared at Michael on stage for like 15 minutes. It was the best thing ever. I wonder who my favorite is. I wonder if anyone's ever come to the conclusion of who my favorite member of Five Sauce is. Who my bias is? Is that what people say this day? Back in the day, we used to say lane. Like, whose lane are you in? But I think the K-pop people say bias. I would be absolutely remiss for not mentioning Hey Violet. This is definitely something I should have mentioned in the previous section, along with Sounds Live, Feels Live, but that was such a chaotic filming session that I just completely forgot to talk about it. So as I mentioned in previous parts, I think, Five Sauce created their own record label called Higher Hey Records. The goal was to start signing people to this record label, however, only one band ever ended up getting signed, and that was Hey Violet. Now, I really do not have time to get into the lore with Hey Violet because it is very chaotic and very messy, but to give you the quickest rundown, they used to be a band called Cherry Bomb, and they were an all-girl band, and their lead singer ended up leaving due to complications. They replaced their lead singer with a guitarist, and the bassist then became the lead singer. The main people who run the band are sisters Rena Loveless and Nia Loveless. And other than the other guitarist that they had hired named Casey, there has been a sort of shuffling around of different members. They were signed to Higher Her Records even after Five Sauce had left Capitol Records, so they weren't even signed to their own record label, yet Hey Violet was. They had a very, very light brush with popularity back in 2018 because they were being signed by Five Sauce. But other than one or two songs, I don't even think making it into the top 40, that's about as successful that they were. And they ended up opening for Five Sauce on select tour dates during Sounds Live, Feels Live. There were two other bands that opened for them during other legs of the tour. But Hey Violet opened for them for the North American tour, so they were the band that I saw open for Five Sauce when I saw them live. To understate things, the fans did not take well to Hey Violet at first. Maybe it was their previous controversy as Cherry Bomb, or maybe it was just classic misogyny, but the fans were very upset with the whole Hey Violet situation. People were full on like, we don't want this band to open for you. We want you to pick a different opener, which is wild. And overall, I think the Five Sauce fam were quick to forget about Hey Violet. I liked some of their music. Their EP that they released right after they were signed to Higher Her Records, I think was pretty good. Their album, not as much, but I'm not going to be a hater or anything. It's very, very late 2010s pop music sounding, and that is just not my cup of tea. But if you're interested in music from that era, that might be a good listen for you. Anyways, I felt like it would just be weird if I didn't mention Hey Violet in this video, so there we go, I mentioned them. After the Sounds Live, Feels Live tour, Five Sauce actually took a break for once. It apparently was the first time in their whole lives that they were told that they didn't have to do something within a week or within a few days. Like, they just had time off. So they took pretty much around a year off away from the public life. This is when the famous trip to Bali happened, which I'm not going to get into. I just wanted to mention it, that it happened. Oh, I made a really good pot of coffee today. Oh, that's so awkward. You're going to see my lipstick ring on the mug. I should have picked a black mug for this. Oh, this is awful. During that time off, I wouldn't exactly say that they lost fans, but I would say that a lot of attention was directed away from them, which I think is what they wanted at the time. A big fear that I perceive Five Sauce having at the time is that they had sophomore slumped. Should I get the tinfoil out for this? I wasn't planning on doing any conspiracies in this video, but I think I need the tinfoil. Again, not precedented on anything whatsoever, but I have a feeling that Five Sauce thought that they sophomore slumped. I mean, I guess they did mention this a little bit in their retrospective. They didn't use the phrase sophomore slump specifically, but I think they said that they were very afraid of how they're going to be perceived going into the next album. They do say that they felt like they were in a very precarious spot after the release of Sounds Good Feels Good and then taking some time off. So I guess, it's not like fully unprecedented. But I do honestly think that they were told, hey, you guys made a shit album, take some time off and recoup and refigure out what 5 Sauce is. For those who don't know what the term sophomore slump even means, it's pretty much a term given to a lot of bands who are overworked as soon as they get signed to a record label. What happens is, once you're a small band and you have years to, work on specific songs and tour them and change them over time, you get one album of, amazing, amazing material. And once you've written all those songs, you get signed to a record label, you release it as your first album under that record label, and it's massive, it's big, everyone loves it. And then all of a sudden, you have 5 months to make the next one. And the record label is expecting the next album to be bigger and better than the first one, even though you have 1/4 of the time you had previously to make the other one. So what happens is that you just kind of chug along at the same pace. You don't evolve really because you only had a little bit of time to make it. And you respond to very fragile and of-the-time criticisms that the band is facing. And audiences don't really like it, they don't appreciate it, because it feels like you just made the same album twice. And then, people stop showing up to the tours, and before you know it, the record label has gotten their 15 minutes of fame out of you, and then they dump you. It happens to a lot of up-and-coming bands, where after their second album, they just deteriorate because of the pressures of being signed to a record label and fame and all that comes with that. I would say that 5 Sauce were slightly different. I mean, they didn't have a lot of time being on their own before they did get swooped up by the One Direction team, but I mean, they did have 2 years to work on their first album, and after the first one came out, they had 3 months to make the next. So, in my opinion, I really think that the record label was just hoping to pump and dump this band. Is that the right phrase? Is that awful? Is that a gross term I've just used? I really do think Capitol Records was we're only going to get 15 minutes out of this band. They're not going to withstand the test of times and last, or we don't want them to last in our grand scheme of things. One Direction is our forever band. They're the ones who are going to keep making us money forever. 5 Sauce, they're just kind of the side thing. Again, once we got all of our money out of them and we worked them to the bone, we can just kind of throw them to the side. Again, no proof whether Modest Management or Capitol Records thought that One Direction was going to be their forever cash cow, but it very much didn't. I guess one thing I should have mentioned while Sounds Good Feels Good was coming out is that Zayn left One Direction, and by 2016, by the time they're on tour for Sounds Live Feels Live, One Direction is over. They're on hiatus. And yes, while there are plenty of analytical videos about One Direction, more about them than there are about 5 Sauce, to a certain degree, you have to end their story in 2016 versus the 5 Sauce story, which is still being made and is still continuing to this day. I think they even said in interviews that they were very much considering breaking up around this point because they thought that the band had run its course, which is what these record labels probably wanted to happen, honestly. I can't remember if they were signed to either a 3-record or a 4-record deal, but hopefully they would just make the first 2 and then break up, and then maybe in 10 years when they need a little bit of cash, they would make that 3rd and final record and then say goodbye to Capitol Records forever. And then if they wanted to make more, they'd have to release it independently. And at that point, you're just a nostalgia circuit band. You're the Backstreet Boys. You're Iron Butterfly, I don't know. But that wasn't 5 Sauce, and that isn't 5 Sauce. They had such a unique bond with one another that their love and care for each other and their creative drive as a group led them to make their most successful album to date. Oh my god, I went on a freaking rant. I went on such a dang rant that my camera stopped recording as I was talking. So hopefully I'll just put some B-roll over me talking. That's why it's good that I have a separate microphone that I record on a separate device, because for some reason my camera just times out after 15 minutes of recording. So the first time any fan had heard that 5 Sauce was back was, I'm pretty sure, in late 2017, when they hinted at the fact that they were going to be releasing a new single. And if my research is correct, on February 22nd, 2018, the single for Want You Back was released in America. If I remember correctly from that 10-year anniversary podcast, they said that Youngblood was the lead single in other countries, specifically Australia, but for some reason the record label did not want to release it as the lead single in America. There's probably many reasons for that. I don't know if people care or want me to explain my opinion on that. I went on a whole rant about how record labels and artists released singles in America for the Billboard charts. I did end up cutting it out just because I thought it was boring and that no one would want to hear about it. But to be very brief, I guess. Usually you release 2 to 3 singles before the album comes out, and then if you're hoping for the best, you release a 4th one after. See, the thing with the modern day and streaming is that this kind of method has slowly faded away, and nowadays you really only release like 1 or 2 singles, and then that's it. You're lucky to even get like a 3rd single. Because how streaming and radio works these days is that you want all of the attention being put on one specific song, rather than all of the attention being spread out amongst multiple singles. I could see the record label thinking that this album cycle wasn't going to be that big of a deal, or, who knows, maybe they thought that Youngblood was going to be a big success. So they wanted to save Youngblood to be more of a song of the summer, rather than like a spring release. So by releasing Want You Back as the lead single, it would help bolster the success of Youngblood once it was released as the 2nd single. Or maybe they thought Want You Back was just going to play better to American audiences, and it didn't, and they went, okay, fine, release the good one. And then they released Youngblood, and that was the real success. Well, I was done talking about them anyways, so I wanted it to come off, actually. I don't hate Want You Back, but I hated it when it came out. I've been kind of burying the lead just because I don't want people to click off this video right away, but as an edgy, emo teenager back in the day, I really did not like Youngblood as an album, and I thought it was bad. And I felt bad because it made me not want to support 5 Sauce anymore. And it's crazy how much I have done a complete 180 on that opinion. It was actually only very recently. I'm glad I waited so long to make this series because it's only been within about a year that I've really started to understand this album, and I've really grown to like it. I guess that could mean that, like, the album's only for grown people. If you're an immature little snothead like I was back in the day, you can't really relate to this album. But once you enter your early 20s and you start to become more of an adult, it starts to make more sense. I don't know. But yeah, I had a specific moment where I was like, I gotta work on this video. That means I have to listen to all the albums again. And I listened to Youngblood and something just clicked. And I understood it all of a sudden. So, like, Want You Back works pretty well within the album, but it's not like an interesting song in my opinion. It is very low-key and very low tempo, and it doesn't really explode like a lot of early 5 Sauce songs that were singles did. It doesn't do the whole Don't Stop thing where it's like, during the chorus. It just kind of grooves at the same beat for the entire song. And then at the very end, it throws in a little bit of spice, but by then it's like, it's already over. I want to explain why Want You Back is the way it is, because I'm very fascinated how music evolved and changed with the invention of Spotify and streaming, and how that changed how people wanted to listen to music. I had talked about how pop music had changed from 2014 to 2015 because those were the 2 years that 5 Sauce albums came out in. But then we have 2 years where the biggest shift in pop music that it was ever going to make in the 2010s happened. And it just happened to be the time that they decided to sit out on making music. I would argue that it had already started when they released Sounds Good Feels Good, and that contributed to why the album didn't succeed according to the record label. But no, it actually really happened in 2016. 2016 is when the real shift in pop music came out. And I'll let you take one guess as to why that happened. This is going to sound really weird because this video is going to be released months from now, but just yesterday there was an attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump. And in 2016 that's when he was elected. And I don't know if this is a conclusion I've drawn myself or if I've picked this up from other, people who talk about pop music, and I've just ingrained it in my mind so much that I think that I came up with it. But I think that the 2016 election shifted pop music drastically. It really changed everything. At the time, everyone was making these think pieces about how pop music is so downturned and low-trodden now. Trap music and Xanax music was the big sound of 2018. And everyone's like, why is that the case? And it's because America was not high in morale. I think that's why. There are 2 ways that the public responds to big political events happening when it comes to pop culture. One is to turn up and party, and the other is to sit in your room and cry. And in the 2016 election, we decided to sit in our room and cry. Versus in 2009, 2010, when the 2007, 2008 housing crisis happened, everyone decided to turn up and party, which is why club music was so big at the start of the 2010s. And that's why pop music was so sad and depressing at the end of the 2010s. So see, when I keep saying that Five Sauce were able to slip in and get popular right when things were about to shift, I wasn't kidding. They were just 2 years ahead of everything changing and their sound becoming sacrilege. The reason why I talked about Royals by Lorde in the first section is purely because that is what pop music sounds like now. If you compare Royals by Lorde to Don't Stop, it's night and day. But you compare Royals by Lorde to Want You Back or Youngblood by Five Sauce, we got Night and Night again. It makes sense. So as soon as Royals by Lorde hit the charts and became a #1 single, it was automatically sad and embarrassing to make a club song anymore. But people still needed music to like turn up to or to like put in their YouTube tutorials, so that's where tropical EDM comes in. It's still electronic dance music, but it's a lot more chill and relaxed, and you can listen to it while crying in your bed, but also while you're like, out on the town, listen to it on the radio. This is where the Chainsmokers come into play, which I'm going to avoid talking about until I have to, which is going to be in the next segment. They still made dance music, but it was very chill and low-key. I mean, Closer was probably the most upbeat pop music was going to get in the second half of the 2010s. So in my opinion, that is why the album Youngblood sounds the way it does. They were purely just responding to the sound that the public had become aware and conscious of. My favorite thing to point out that really reflects this, that an article pointed out like years ago, if I can find it, I'll look it up again, but in 2014, the #1 song of the summer was Happy by Pharrell Williams, and the #1 song of the summer in 2018, just 4 years later, was Sad by XXXTentacion. If that doesn't reflect public sentiment, then I don't know what would. I do think streaming and Spotify does have a lot to play into this, because back in the 80s, when you would release a single, you had to make sure you included all the good bits as often as you wanted to include them. That's why a lot of songs back in the day were like 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes long, because they would play it on the radio and you wanted to make sure you heard that chorus as many times as you did before it was over, and you had to wait like a few hours until the DJ played it again on the radio. But nowadays, if you want to hear that one part of that song again, you can just put it on loop and listen to it again as soon as you want, at the touch of your fingertips. And I'm pretty sure TikTok hadn't come to America yet by this point, so TikTok wasn't really influencing the songs that got popular. I would say TikTok like really brought back like summer jams or like, upbeat music, because you need it for certain moods of videos. Like in the cute video of my puppy doing an awesome little flip, I can't put Sad by XXXTentacion in the background of that, trying to think of big songs within the years of 2016 to 2019. Bad at Love by Halsey, Love by Kendrick Lamar. Trap music becomes really big. No one really wants to listen to like B.O.B. anymore. It's all about the Migos. You guys can correct me in the comments below, but as far as I'm aware, the song Bad and Bougie by Migos did come out in 2018. And honestly, that's the song that I would say is like the biggest song of 2018, like the biggest representation of the year. Yeah, I'm giving it to Bad and Bougie. Oh, we can't forget Taylor Swift in her Reputation era, which I have no comment on because I do not want to get murdered. The Swifties don't need me to think Reputation is good, okay? I like Taylor Swift. I like a lot of her music, but I don't like some of it, and that's fine. We can move on now. So right before Youngblood is released as the second single, Five Sauce go on the Five Sauce 3 tour. It goes from March to June of 2018, and this was them sort of reintroducing themselves to the public world, what they now were going to identify themselves as. I mean, the wardrobe is probably the most obvious change. Gone were the days of the 2014 Tumblr grunge, and in were the days of, like, Billie Eilish pre-e-girl look. Baggy ripped jeans, the works. They still had the black skinny jeans on, though, in this era. You could tell that was on its way out. So it's while they're doing the Five Sauce 3 tour that Youngblood drops in America. Now, this is 5 Seconds of Summer's biggest song. Youngblood is the biggest single they've ever released so far. It was a top 10 hit in America, which is a very big deal. It was the #1 on radio, which is also a big deal in my opinion. And I'm pretty sure this is around the time they start being considered the best-selling Australian act ever. beating out AC/DC, which is, again, a big deal. I don't know if the people who reported that have adjusted for inflation or not. I still think because of just the massive success that was Youngblood as a single and as an album, that still makes sense to me. You think the Kid Leroy is gonna take over their spot? Sorry, I couldn't say it without laughing. I want to talk about Youngblood. Can we talk about Youngblood? I've been dying to talk about Youngblood. Here's the thing. I don't think I like this song. I think I just have accepted it as a part of my life. It's the same with Don't Stop, you know? Although this is a much better song than Don't Stop, don't worry. I truly think what it is the fact that it is so on trend and of its time that it'll come back around to being, like, one of the big songs of the 2010s. Like, if there's gonna be a movie that, like, takes place in 2018 or whatever, like, this is gonna be a song they have to include on the soundtrack or whatever. Starting the album with this song and naming it this definitely makes a statement and tells everybody that this is what they're going to be going forward. And that's cool and all, but it's not my favorite song on the album. That's all I'm trying to say. It's like an 8 out of 10. And a lot of the songs are like 9s out of 10s, you know what I mean? But yes, 5 Sauce released Youngblood. They invented the word Say You Want Me. Things are going great. And then I'm pretty sure the album is released in June of 2018. If I remember correctly, they released it a week earlier than they originally planned to, probably because that was when the song was going to be at its peak performance, and they wanted it to lift up the album as well. And I mean, this was a pretty big album. It was their 3rd album to debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Apparently, they're the only band to have ever done this 3 times in a row. Is my nose really shiny? I don't want it to be so shiny. Extremely shiny. I'm gonna go powder my nose. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. What time is it? Oh my god! I think I'm just gonna mention it now because why not? I think it's very notable that this is the first time 5 Sauce have ever released alternate versions of their singles. I could see many people saying that this is not a big deal at all because in the age of streaming, alternate versions or remixes with other artists or just general remixes do bolster up the actual singles numbers. For example, Lie to Me was released as a single. This is a little bit later on though, so we'll talk about it when it happens. And it also had a remix featuring Julia Michaels. So if someone went on Spotify and listened to the original Lie to Me, it would give it, you know, a little boost in the ratings. But if someone went and then listened to the Julia Michaels version, it would also boost up the ratings. It gets contributed towards the same number. And I'm pretty sure if at a certain point a remix is getting more points added to it than the original version is, then Billboard will credit the version with the remix. Because there are certain situations like when Mike Posner released that one song and people only listened to it because of the remix, not because of the original version, which was a boring acoustic song. You weren't gonna see the acoustic original version being credited on Billboard. So when 5 Sauce released Youngblood, they also released an acoustic version of Youngblood. And I think it's very notable that when you watch the Apple Music little mini documentary they made about this album release, when you watch them performing like the demo of the song, it sounds like the acoustic version. The arrangement is the acoustic version. So my theory is, let me see if I can get this shit to look good for once. My theory is that for the singles, at least for these next 2 albums, so this one and then Calm, they changed the sound of the single so it would more fit with public sentiment, modern, you know, pop music sounds. And that the reason why the alternate versions were released, like the acoustic version of Youngblood, or we're going to talk more about later on, of course, the From the Vault tracks from the Calm era. I think the reason why those songs were released is because that is the actual sound they wanted the songs to have, but they knew they wouldn't play well on radio, so they changed them to be a bit more trendy and then released those as the actual official songs. And you know, 5 Sauce know their fans. They know if there's a song out there that's not like the official version, they don't give a fuck. They'll still listen to the version that they like the most, or even songs that were never officially on the album. I think the reason why a lot of people have nostalgia for the self-titled era is because they like a lot of songs from that era that weren't actually on the album. At least that's the case for me. Maybe I'm just projecting. I don't know. So, like, they know that their fans will find the version that they like the most and listen to that one. So they don't, like, feel like they need the original or the true version of the song to be on the album. Because that's never fucking mattered to the fans and clearly not to them. But, you know, That's all just my conspiracy theory. Maybe we'll talk more about that during the Calm era, because that's where it really starts to happen with the From the Vault tracks, versus right now where it's pretty much just this acoustic version of Youngblood. I mean, personally, I enjoy listening to the acoustic version of Youngblood more than I like the studio version. Maybe that's just because the studio release was like the one that got played on the radio a lot. So like when I was going to listen to this song, I would just prefer to listen to the alternate version because it was like a slight difference, you know? So now here's the big moment where we talk about Youngblood. Where's my fucking CD? Shit, it's on the other side of the goddamn room. Why do I start fucking recording when all my shit is all spread around? God, I hate my life. I'm gonna fucking kill myself tonight. So yes, let's talk about the actual contents of Youngblood now. Yes, I have the Michael version. Shut up. Also, there's not actually a little booklet in here. This just folds out to be a giant poster. So I'm just gonna have to read the lyrics from somewhere else. So I would say one of the big differences between Sounds Good, Feels Good and Youngblood, you know, besides the everything, is the fact that Youngblood is primarily a sort of breakup album. Yes, there are a lot of mentions of a deteriorating relationship on Sounds Good, Feels Good, but I feel like a lot of the time they focus on, like, being rock stars, you know, versus this one, which focuses a lot more on, like, the emotional anguish, and less of, like, the emo angle of it, like they did on songs like The Girl Who Cried Wolf from the previous album, but more in, like, a douchebag way. That's the best phrase I'm going to use for it. Both albums, I would argue, are like them in their college era because they were in their late teens and early 20s, versus the self-titled, which is like the high school kind of vibes, you know? There's a lot of lovey-dovey, cutesy stuff on the self-titled album, versus Sounds Good, Feels Good, which is like, oh no, I'm becoming an adult, ew, gross. And this album is like, I'm an adult and everything sucks. Which is going to be a theme for the next few albums we're going to talk about later on, too, so, you know. So yes, the lyrics to the title track are, in fact, about breaking up. It's honestly a very bitter and resentful track. That's why I think the sad acoustic lulling works a lot more than, like, the pumped-up bass and, like, that boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. But, you know, maybe that's just me. It definitely contrasts more. Remember the words you told me, love me till the day I die. Surrender my everything, 'cause you made me believe you're mine. Yeah, you used to call me baby, now you're calling me by name. It takes one to know one, yeah, you beat me at my own damn game. If I'm being completely honest, currently right now, as I sit here, I'm not, like, fully sure how the term Youngblood relates to the themes of this album, and even just, like, the name and then the context of the song. From the light research I've done on the true meaning of the word Youngblood, it seems to be a phrase that people use to describe somebody who is very childlike or young in their approach to things or in their ideology. So I guess you could say that in the chorus when they say, young blood, say you want me out of your life, they're referring to the person who is breaking up with them as young blood, as in somebody who is handling this breakup very immaturely. And honestly, I think using the phrase young blood for the name of the album reflects that as well. It's showing how they're maturing as people, yet still reacting to things very, very immaturely. I think there's plenty of songs that do that. My favorite example is Moving Along. Sorry if you saw me itching my arm just now. I have a mosquito bite, and it's itchy. I actually have one on my hand. Is that gross to, like, point out? My mosquito bite right there? Moving Along is a song that I, like, kind of hated. There are plenty of songs on this album that I hated when I first heard them, but over time have become some of my favorite Five Sauce songs. I mean, with lyrics like, is it bad that I'm hoping you're still broken? Is it bad that I'm wishing you're still broken? That you haven't found fish in the ocean? Is it bad? So bad. And then the chorus, which is, thinking 'bout you lots lately. Have you been eating breakfast alone like me? Thinking 'bout you lots lately, or are you moving along? It's like speaking to the sentiment of hoping that the person who broke your heart has a horrible time and is doing horrible without you. I think there are also a lot more tender songs in relation to breaking up, is the song Ghost of You. So if you guys remember me talking about the song Broken Pieces in the previous segment and talking about how that song is going to relate to a later song in their career, this is the song. The lyrics to Broken Pieces talking about somebody all of a sudden one day leaving without a trace. You wake up one morning and they're no longer sitting in bed next to you and all their stuff is gone. Well, that is how Ghost of You starts, except the mood and the understanding of how the relationship is going is drastically different from both songs. Which makes me think that maybe both of these songs were about the same situation, but at different points when the situation was happening. Like when they wrote Broken Pieces, it was like, the whole point of the song is we can fix these broken pieces. We can still make it work even though, you've decided to leave me and things are bad. Versus Ghost of You, it's just wallowing in sadness and despair. It's like the most iconic, sad, eating a tub of ice cream in your bed breakup song, in my opinion. And then you have songs that are like snapshots of specific moments when the relationship is deteriorating or right before things really fall apart, and I think those songs are the most interesting ones. Why Won't You Love Me has become a standout track for me, when again, it was one I originally hated. I thought the chorus was very, very cringy and like desperate in a bad way. But then I realized that it's like desperate in a bad way. I think it really speaks to me now in a way that it didn't speak to me when I was like 15. Also, the lyrics are just so good. I feel like I could spend like 20 hours just talking about the lyrics. Switching into airplane mode again. We're not alright, but I'll pretend. Press my cheek against the glass. Just be good till I get back. That last line is wild. The ground disappears. I hold back the tears. I check my phone to see your face. Staring back as if to say, don't worry, you won't be lonely. So the first part of the song is talking about having to leave somebody that you're with, as in go on a trip or something for a few days. So feeling that separation really start to hit you, Sometimes when the relationship isn't doing too well or it's kind of deteriorating a little bit, having a physical separation can really push things into motion. The chorus is, why won't you love me, repeated, and then, you imagine when you close your eyes, you're with me on the other side. So why won't you love me? I see it as describing a relationship that is built on convenience. It was a lot of sparks at the beginning, and now it's just still holding on because, what else is there to do? I think the next few lines really describe that well. Few drinks deep at a table for one, the place we like to go, and you take yourself home again. 3 missed calls at 2 a.m. You say you never heard, you're late to get to work, and then the time disappears. You hold back the tears. Your best girlfriend just got engaged. You say you can't wait. You need to make a change. You told me it's so hard to be lonely. That's the part that fucking gets to me, okay? This time that they've had to spend apart because of business reasons or whatever has opened up the reason why they're still in this relationship and why it's not working. The song is telling a story. The story is unfolding in front of your eyes. This kind of didn't happen in the previous album. They didn't have this sort of pen work back then. And one thing that I love is when they change the words in the chorus, which is what they do in this song. It repeats, why won't you love me? And then says, we're together all alone tonight, so helpless from the other side. So why won't you love me? It's so sad, y'all! It's very sad, and it's very, I think, really beautifully written. And then we have the breakdown, which is, can you tell me why, my love? Can you tell me why I hold on to you, and you hold on to me? It's like, why are we still holding on to each other when we know that this relationship doesn't work? And it's because it's so hard to be lonely. And the sound is very trendy and of its time, but doesn't sound too dated. It's not Gold by Kiara levels of pitch shifting and glitch tones and all that stuff. It still tones it back a bit and just stays in a really good pop song kind of realm. The timeline of the album does jump around a little bit because there are plenty of songs about being in love and also being in a new relationship of sorts. So I think the album was mainly constructed on a sonic level of cohesion and less on a lyrical cohesion of things. Did I just accidentally say sonically cohesive?
It was sonically cohesive.
Taylor Swift has just been haunting this whole series, apparently. For some reason, on AZ Lyrics, it's telling me that everything after Ghost of You is considered a bonus track, which is wild. I never realized that if you don't have a deluxe edition, technically Ghost of You is the final song on the album, which is a crazy way to end an album. That song is so sad. Babylon is the perfect closing track, honestly. Relating the fall of your relationship to the literal fall of the Tower of Babylon is such a funny yet kind of amazing way to end the album. Even though I don't think the sentiment of the song directly relates to Babylon, I think the imagery it provokes is really good. Because it seems that the song specifically is relating to a relationship that burned really hot really fast and then just burned out very quickly. I think there are plenty of stories that actually contradict the idea of the Tower of Babylon being this like spur of the moment thing that was really, really cool for a short amount of time and then exploded into nothingness. There are some stories that describe the Tower of Babylon as being this thing that lasted for years and went on for a very, very long time before it was smited down by God. I'm going to insert this in post because I ran out of time to record in my previous segment, so I'm just going to look different for a little bit throughout the video. Hope you don't mind. There seems to be a heavy 80s synthwave, kind of new wave inspiration on this album, which was a very popular kind of sound to hop on in 2018. I would argue that that's really the sound that pop music evolved to past the, tropical EDM sound. I would say it was quite grimy, quite dark, a lot of minor keys, and then a lot of that new wave sound comes with the combining of synthesizers and guitars and trying to make each device sound like the other. I think on Talk Fast specifically, they were able to absolutely nail the Flock of Seagulls 1980s kind of guitar tone. A lot of people consider A Flock of Seagulls and I Ran So Far Away as like a famous 80s synthesizer song, but I think most of what's creating that vibe is actually the guitar. They're only playing like a few muted keys in the background. It's really that like crazy distortion and pedal work on the guitar that's making that sound that everyone remembers. I feel like they've now swapped where the guitars and the pianos are in the mix. Usually the guitars are at the front and the pianos are in the back, and now we've swapped to where the guitars are a lot more faint and the piano is more up front. I think this probably reflects how they were writing their new music going forward. Before, they would probably sit down with their acoustic guitar and write a song, but they were now sitting in front of the piano and writing a song. This is also the first time that the band started working with Swedish songwriters. If you don't know, Sweden is a big outpost of popular music songwriters and producers. Famously, both, I'm pretty sure, NSYNC and Britney Spears were shipped off to Sweden to record their first albums with Max Martin. And since then, Max Martin has had a lot of proteges who are Swedish and have come over to the States and have become pretty prevalent songwriters. So there are a lot of Swedish songwriters on this project. In my opinion, I don't think this was a direct dig, but it feels like to me that awkward promotional thing that Green Day did that one time where it was like, no synths, no Swedish songwriters, just good old-fashioned American rock and roll. Like, I knew they weren't calling out Five Sauce specifically with that poster, but, like, it kind of felt like it a little bit because that came out right when they were, advertising the fact that, yeah, they were working with a lot of Swedish songwriters at the time. Lie to Me is a song that I think started out as a piano ballad that really evolved into a lot more of a quirky, kind of very 2018 sounding song. No offense to the trap hi-hats, but offense to the trap hi-hats. You don't hear a lot of trap hi-hats in pop music anymore, and that's because it was kind of a dated thing that a lot of artists were doing at the time. I want to talk about Meet You There because apparently it was the first song ever written for this project, and it was definitely my favorite song on the album for the longest time. And I would say it still is. A lot of the other songs have really been elevated for me, but even when I first heard this album in 2018 and I didn't like it, Meet You There was still the only song I actually liked and listened to a lot. This is when I started cataloging my favorite songs of the year, and ever since 2017 I've been doing a top 50 songs of the year, and this one was in the top 5. I really liked Meet You There at the time. In retrospect, I definitely would have added some other songs from this album on the project, but at the time I was salty and bitter, so whatever. A big thing that they talked about in a lot of interviews at the time was them starting to work with more electronic elements in their songs, leaning more into electronic production, and I would argue that Meet You There is the sort of trendier, modern evolution of the kind of sound they were doing on songs like She's Kinda Hot. They were like, we clearly like this sort of glitchy, stop-starting sound, but instead of doing it like how The Offspring did it, let's do it how, a lot of these modern EDM producers are, like Kygo are doing it. So there are some deluxe tracks on this album. 2 of them are When You Walk Away and Best Friend. I'll be honest with you guys, When You Walk Away has definitely grown on me over time. It has been a song that I genuinely like to listen to multiple times over. And I can listen to it because I got the CD, so I have the MP3 file, so I downloaded it on all my devices. So whenever I want to hear it, I can just play it. That's why I think people need to start buying the fucking discs more often, because now you have to listen to a secret podcast episode on Spotify if you want to hear the song, or open up YouTube, But no, I just have it. Best Friend is a song I wouldn't have included as even a bonus track. No offense to it. It's cute, but the sneezing line, It's not your best work, guys. No offense, it's not your best work. So I guess to give final thoughts on my opinions on the album, I don't know why I'm holding it with this hand. So I guess to give my final thoughts on this album, I like it. It definitely is a vibe that I am much more feeling these days than I was when it actually came out in 2018. I think I was a very pessimistic high schooler at the time, and even though I loved following pop music and, looking at the charts and everything like that, I think everyone was kind of in this mood of like, music sucks right now. It's bad, and I wish it was better. It feels like so many music critics at the time just felt so lost when talking about pop music from the years 2016 to 2020. But things definitely do evolve past this sound, especially in the years of 2019 and 2020. And those happen to be the years that Five Sauce released more music, so I'm very glad that this video has been an excuse for me to talk about pop music in the 2010s, because it is one of my deep hyperfixations. If you guys ever want to see me do like a top 10 best and worst hit songs of each decade leading up to 2020, I would do that. I would love to do that. It's not like I already have like lists made or anything like that. The third single released was Valentine, and this was released in August, which is such an awkward time in my opinion. The song is called Valentine, so like ideally it would have been released in February during Valentine's Day time, but that's when the album cycle started. So, it makes sense to not release it as the lead single or anything. But the sound of the song is very Halloween sounding. A lot of people have been saying, oh, it sounds like a Halloween song more than it sounds like a Valentine's Day song. But it was released in August, not even near Halloween time, so it's a bit awkward of a release. But I actually really like Valentine. It's a good, like, romantic song, I think the sexual innuendos have shifted from being sort of cheeky to being a lot more, like, sultry in a way. Like, this man says, so deep. What am I supposed to do?
So deep, your DNA's being messed with my touch. Can't beat us.
I'm pretty sure this is one of the only songs that Five Sauce have done like a genius lyrics breakdown for, because it was the single they had just released when that happened. I much prefer the live version, which I think like literally everyone does, but I'll talk about the Meet You There tour live album a little bit later. Lie to Me was also a single. I actually think Lie to Me was the third single and Valentine was the fourth one, if I'm remembering that correctly. As far as I'm aware, Julia Michaels did help write the song, which is why she decided to hop on a remix. It's funny because they had tweeted out that they were going to make a music video for the Julia Michaels featured version of Lie to Me, because they had already made a video previously, but that never ended up happening, which a lot of fans like meme and joke about. Like, you promised a music video and it didn't come out. And my theory is that either there were scheduling conflicts, which happens all the time, or maybe they thought the single was going to be a bigger hit with the remix because Julia Michaels at the time had a pretty big song with the song Issues, but the song didn't really get more traction because of the remix. Maybe a little bit, but it didn't really become like the next big hit off the album. Youngblood seems to really only be the big single that came out from this album cycle. This leads a lot of people to kind of describe them as sort of two-hit wonders, because if you were to ask a random person on the side of the street, like, hey, do you know who 5 Seconds of Summer is? There's a likely chance that they'll say no, but then when you mention either the song She Looks So Perfect or Youngblood, they'll be like, oh, yes. And then it's also very common to hear people say stuff like, oh, that was the same band? Because, I mean, yes, it is two very different vibes. So Youngblood was a big success, and it also brought a lot of new fans into the Five Sauce fam. A lot of people who didn't really know them from their pop-punk roots and their previous stuff, and then later got into their older albums after becoming stans. Also, a lot of older fans had kind of migrated to the K-pop community while they were on their break, so a lot of them did come back, and some of them didn't. So this was really a brand new, renewed time for the band. And honestly, you can tell just how fresh and excited and ready they felt to, become celebrities or popular artists again. A lot of their early performances do seem a little awkward. It looks like Luke isn't super comfortable performing without guitar just yet, and it seems like they didn't really know how to act, how to perform these songs live, versus their other ones they knew exactly how to perform on stage while playing the songs. But you can see them rework and evolve their old style into something that's new and truly Five Sauce. I think the Meet You There tour was really where they kind of worked out these small little adaptational issues. Can we start? Are we going? Are we going? Oh jeez. Everything's a mess. There's just shit everywhere. Good morning. It's day 2, and I've put considerably less effort into my appearance today. Let's continue where we left off. So the Meet You There tour lasted from August to November of 2018, so basically the fall time. There were other things to come out around this time, notably the cocktail chats. Do people remember those? Of course they do. It's like one of the big pillars of Five Sauce internet content. Because at this point in their career they were considerably more offline, I would say that the cocktail chats were like the first window that people had into Five Sauce during this new era. If you didn't know who they were before Youngblood came out, this was really your way of finding out who they were. The cocktail chats were a series of videos released on their YouTube channel where they got very drunk and talked about different songs on the album. They also continued to do video diaries, or tour diaries as they were later called. This was pretty much the only time Five Sauce vlogged ever again. Before, you could follow their Kik account, or their Instagram, or even their Snapchat for a little bit there. And you would get a very personal, or at least what felt like a very personal window into their lives. And they were also doing those tour diaries. But now they were exclusively doing the tour diaries. Yes, they still posted on social media, but it wasn't as often or as personal feeling. It was more just like pictures of them doing things. While I think Five Sauce actually got some time in between recording to actually just be human beings and find out who they are outside of the band, they were still doing a lot of partying, it seems. I think a big part of their ethos going forward is going to be them talking about party culture and alcoholism and drug abuse and how that has affected their career and them as people. And I really do think they're still in the throes of it at this point in their career. I think a lot of these songs are still about drinking and partying and doing things you probably shouldn't be doing, but you're doing anyways because you're famous and who cares. So while they are talking about it in a slightly more mature and grown-up manner, I still think it is like a core problem. I guess what I'm saying is, as somebody who is from the future looking at the past right now, you could see the evolution of how they were and what their feelings were about certain topics. The same topic is being discussed across multiple albums of theirs, but the artist's perspective on the matter has drastically shifted. So I think it'll be interesting to document how that element of their story evolves throughout the music. I didn't write down when the Meet You There tour live album came out, but it's one of my favorite Five Sauce things to just listen to. Back in 2018, I was a bit conflicted on whether I wanted to see them live again or not. I mean, I was completely unable to because they weren't playing a show literally anywhere near me whatsoever during that tour. So I didn't have the opportunity to go see them live anyways. But I was like, if I did have the opportunity, would I go? Because at that time, I wasn't really considering myself a fan of Five Sauce. I mean, yes, I did buy the shirt and the CD, but I think that was just remnants of my stanhood coming out to play. I actually wasn't a fan of the music on this album when I bought it. I remember when I bought this CD, I put it on in the car with my brother as we were driving around running some errands, and the whole time I was just kind of like, it's not my favorite, but I bought it because I wanted to, support them and give it another shot. I didn't want to be too harsh on it. And the whole time my brother just kind of kept saying, I mean, yeah, it's very trendy, and yeah, it's really nice that we're listening to this now as we're, driving from grocery store to grocery store as we're running errands. But, it didn't have much more to say outside of that. Why does my Cleo doll look so emo? Let's get that fringe out of the way. How about that? So I would say the Youngblood era was definitely a very renewed and refreshed period for the band. They now had a new sound and style, and it proved to them that they couldn't just be boxed into one specific genre. They weren't going to be the next all-time low, where they just kind of felt like they stagnated for a lot of years and then became sad and old. Even though at the time I thought they were selling out, I would say that they were more of speaking true to what they really wanted the band to be at the end of the day. They said in a lot of retrospectives when talking about their career that when they started the band, they wanted to be considered the biggest band in the world. I truly think as children they wanted to be like Green Day, where they stuck true to their punk roots, but were still these massively successful artists. You could have the catchy pop hook that gets played a million times on the radio for decades to come, which Green Day had with When I Come Around. I mean, When I Come Around is a pop song. I feel like people don't talk about that as often. It is a pop song. Because you're a bunch of snot-nosed punk kids, it sounds like it's not a pop song, but it literally is. But in the 2010s, with rock music being splintered into a million different microgenres that people who are fans of said microgenres will not listen to the other genres of, but with rock music and its fandom being so splintered by the 2010s, something like that just wasn't possible. The pop punk kids weren't listening to like the pirate metal guys, and vice versa. Like things were just way too separated by genre in the rock scene, which I think is what many critics have pointed to why rock music declined as a popular genre, specifically on the charts and just in general as being an influential sound. So, to leave that tangent aside, I really do think Youngblood is a standout album of the year 2018 specifically, and the later sounds of the 2010s. I mean, think of the other albums that came out this year. Other than Melodrama, I mean, we have Trench by 21 Pilots, Mania by Fall Out Boy. That came out in 2018, didn't it? Be the Cowboy by Mitski, Sweetener by Ariana Grande. Things were very different at the time, and I think this is one of those albums that feels timeless, but also speaks to the certain point of time it's from. Like, it definitely sounds like a 2018 album, but it also can stand the test of time and be something that I can relate to now in 2024. So yes, Youngblood, good album. Youngblood era, good era, for the most part. I already said I wasn't going to mention drama. I already said I wasn't going to talk about drama and gossip in these videos, but I don't know, I feel like I didn't talk about like the personal lives of Five Sauce as much in this video, and that's purely because of two reasons. The first reason is that I don't know anything about the personal drama that was going on in this year. As I've stated multiple times now, to my own dismay, I wasn't really a fan of Five Sauce at this time, and I wasn't actively following them. And two, and people can correct me on this in the comments below, but I truly think that they were living more quiet lives. They weren't being as obviously dramatic in the public eye anymore. They didn't have another Rolling Stone scandal, and I don't think they have continued to have one since. I have to make this outro fast because my camera's about to time out. I can feel it happening. So, thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe. If you like hearing me talk about things that people aren't really nostalgic for yet, hit that subscribe button. We only had 2 nail casualties throughout the whole video. I think that's pretty impressive. In the next part of this series I'm doing about Five Sauce, I'm going to talk about Calm, which is a very interesting album to talk about, mainly through its setting of which it was released. And if you want to hear me talk about all of the previous Five Sauce albums, those videos are already out. I have a playlist that I made. Feel free to check that out. And just like that, we're in the present day. It's really late at night, so I'm talking very quietly, don't mind. I have a few housekeeping things that I need to update you guys with. The video's over, by the way, so if you don't care, then just feel free to click off. So, I filmed that segment a year ago. This is clear proof at just how all-encompassing the decom project was. It really did ruin my schedule for almost an entire year, one could say. 6 months a year, you know, what does it mean anymore, right? So I wanted to tell you guys the next plans that I had for my next few videos, just so you guys are aware, you know, kind of where we're going with the channel now that we're done with the decom series, finally. So I'm going to try and go back to my original plans, which was every other video is about Disney Channel and then every other video is about music. And I have a full back catalog of videos that I fully recorded and have half edited but never got to finish in time for the decom project. So they have been sitting like half finished on my hard drive for months now. So I'm going to consider this a sort of catch-up little moment for the channel where I just finish these videos that are like 60 to 90% done a lot of the time. And then finally I will upload the full final decom video. It is over 8 hours now as of the current time that I have the full timeline sorted out. So it's very long, and hopefully that'll keep you guys fed for a certain length of time, because I have some special plans for October, kind of similar to what we did last year, and so I'm hoping uploading that video will then give me some time to work on the October stuff. One of the big things I'm going to be doing in October is also working on my podcast that I have with my friends. Yes, I do have a podcast. I've had one since before I really started making videos, actually. And we used to upload on my personal channel, but now we are uploading to a special channel. So feel free to check out the Vampy Wampy Campy podcast channel on YouTube. No, I did not come up with a name. we are actually we've revived the podcast, and every week now we are uploading a video where we watch and review an episode of Gravity Falls. So each episode, we're going to go through every episode in the whole series, and we have previously done this with My Babysitter's a Vampire, and we now have moved on to Gravity Falls. So I think the day that this video is coming out, the exact day, there will be a podcast episode up. Maybe it might come out the day after, I don't know, we'll see. But there are fresh new episodes up on the channel right now if you're interested, so feel free to go check those out. Thank you so much to everybody who's been so patient with me, and I know that uploading this 5 sauce video might not be the best for my channel or whatever. I should, stick to what's gotten me popular, but I just genuinely only want to make videos about things that I care about, and these next few videos I have are things that I really care about, so I'm very excited to get them out. I can say with certainty that the next video that will be coming out will be me watching and ranking every Cinderella story movie, so it will have a similar vibe and structure to the decom videos, so hopefully that feels a little bit more in the wheelhouse for the people who like the decom videos. And it was supposed to come out before the decom video, so hopefully people will enjoy it. So that's all. Thank you for watching. I genuinely, deeply appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next video, which hopefully should be coming out within a week or two. Really trying to get these old videos off my hard drive and finally free up some space for the next big project. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.
So